We all struggle with feeling like there's not enough time in the day to be productive personally or professionally. We all struggle to make our time matter. It's time to take control. It's time to start investing in the corporation of you. At Athena, they've helped over 700 ambitious professionals achieve more by connecting them with best-in-class, globally remote executive assistants. Athena executive assistants go beyond basic administration tasks. They help you make time matter through the art of delegation. They believe delegation is the superpower of all highly successful people, and your personal EA will help you get there. Your EA is a one-on-one long-term partner to help you achieve your personal and professional goals. Take back your time. Join the waitlist at athenago.com. That's athenago.com.
Hey folks, it's Matt Zachary, and welcome to VAXON, a brand new weekly segment of my podcast Adaptations right here on the OffScrip Media Network.
Hey, I'm Elura Nano. I'm a lawyer, a journalist, a mom of a teenage narcoleptic, and a professional big mouth.
Lou and I go back 30 years as best friends, and we're here to have fun and bring you a layperson's guide to what the hell just happened this week in healthcare as America gets its vax on and shows COVID the door.
Matt gets me. He knows I'm tired, annoyed, and sometimes pushed to the brink by the intense chaos of our lives right now. We're here together to learn, complain, and include you in the conversation.
So join us on Twitter at VaxOnPod and share your stories and grievances using the hashtag VaxOn. Conspiracy theorists and haters shall be neutralized on sight.
All right, Matt, let's get at it.
So, I assume like everything we just talked about for the last minute and 47 seconds is just going to be how we start the show. But we technically have a first segment, which is how the hell are you?
I hate everything.
So nothing's new.
This is like the Snowpocalypse version of my life and how much I hate everything because of the fucking snow. So it snowed for one day, like, as you know, right?
And for the listeners, Elura's in South Jersey.
I'm in South Jersey near Philly. It snowed for a day, and it caused like a Who's on First episode of vaccine hijinks that ripple affected my family into like apoplectic rage. Okay. So like we started with my son was supposed to get the COVID vaccine, but then it snowed, so it got canceled. So, okay, fine. Like that's respectable, right? New Jersey sends a message that says, just come the next day at the same time and you'll get your vaccine then. But the state didn't talk to the county, and the county said they'll email us, and the hospital said, check the Facebook page, and there was nothing on the Facebook page. So we showed up to get the shot, and they told us to go home, and then we go home and we get a voicemail that says we missed the appointment.
That sounds accurate for Jersey.
Yeah, I was just like, I can't, I'm just trying. And by the way, that's not all, because that's just like step one in snow messing with my life. Because step two is that now my son has lower SAT scores because of the snow, right? Follow this. See if you can follow this domino effect of insanity.
Go forth. I'm hearing.
Okay. So this is like the bouncing ball of mid-sanity. So my son is narcoleptic, right? And
yes.
That means that he takes medicine that can only be procured from one pharmacy in the whole country. So that's fine. So like once a month, we all take the day off work to make sure that we're there to get the medicine in hand, in person. And it's like being in ancient Greece in the Olympics. Like they hand us the torch and then we bring it in. Like this is what's happening with the medicine, right? And they're like, and you can't lie the bottle down. It has to stand up. So it snows for a day, and somehow the medicine is like mysteriously held up for an entire week, and no one knows where it is. Not FedEx, not the pharmacy. No one knows where it is, and I guarantee that those bottles are not standing up. So
oh boy.
my son now has to go an entire week without getting a good night's sleep because he's in a state of perpetual sleep deprivation, which means that the $2,500 SAT course that I'm paying for isn't very helpful because he can't stay awake during it. So that's where we are right now. This is because of one day of snow. How are you?
Dear Phil Murphy.
And I don't even know that it's New Jersey because the medicines came from St. Louis. So it's like the whole country had snow for a day and couldn't figure it out.
I mean, it always could be worse. You could be in Texas.
You could be in Texas, right? I mean, not to laugh at the people in Texas because that's a whole other shit show.
Yeah,
but
that's a dear power grid free market bullshit story.
Now that I'm in a position where I rely on medicine every day for my son, every time there's a power issue or a transportation issue or like any of that, the first thing that I think of now is like, oh shit, what are people doing that are taking daily medication? Because it means that you're like basically down for the count until whatever the problem is gets resolved, which is really a major stress. Like for even if it's not a life-saving situation, the amount of stress is just unbelievable when you're dealing with that.
Well, the ripple effect too. I mean, again, we're making fun of Texas, but the ripple effect of that on people who have children with narcolepsy or people on chemotherapy regimens or people who can't get to the hospital because of COVID and now no electricity. Yeah, this is a really big clusterfuck that we have to all deal with.
And if you take into account, right, like there's all the people that have really serious medical conditions, like sick people, right? Then you have people like in my family where I don't consider us sick people because we're functional, we go about our day and we're generally fine, but we rely on medication to stay well. So that's like a whole other bunch of people. And then there's people that have, even more minor maybe health conditions, but they also rely on medication to be at their best. So by the time you factor in all the sick people, all the people who rely on medication to stay well, and all the people who rely on medication to stay, at their best, that's a lot of freaking people. And if all of those people are messed up because of FedEx or bad weather or whatever it is, like that's a mess.
I feel I got nothing on you in terms of how horrible your week was, but I guess
what do you got?
My wife's school opened and closed and opened again.
Again?
Yes.
I don't understand. I don't understand with the schools with the opening and closing.
Well, we're going to get to that in our third segment, but yes, managing all of that and public disclosure, I had a relative fall. They're fine, but in the interest of like who's covering the kids and homeschooling and tech support and all this crap, yeah. First world problems for like I guess the privilege I have, but at the same time, it's still not that great. Anyway,
right? It's still and it's always that weird balance between being grateful that you're not dealing with something much worse, but then really being super fucking aggravated with what you are dealing with, because even though it could be worse, it's still annoying in your general daily life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place to recognize where you live on the strata of socioeconomic benefit or not. But it's still it's fucking horrible to just deal with it for yourself, and owning that is clearly what we're ranting about right now.
Right. It's like, tell that to my mood. Yes, it could be worse in other places. Absolutely. Just tell that to my mood because my mood is pissed off.
On that note, we'll be right back after we pay some bills.
Has your chronic illness made it difficult to continue working in the traditional way? Want to learn how to find and create flexible remote work that both accommodates your chronic illness and generates an income? Join the Patients Getting Paid membership, a community of chronicpreneurs where people just like you find workshops and trainings, weekly updated condition-specific gigs, twice monthly coaching calls, co-workings, accountability, and the kindest community to support you on your path to make money while working from anywhere and taking good care of yourself. Learn more or join us at patientsgettingpaid.com.
So let's move on to our second segment. We want to talk about some of the ridiculousness, and we call it the fuckery section, but I think we can't not lead, I hate double negatives, with these two women in Florida who pulled off like an Estelle Getty, dressing older than she really is or they really are on Golden Girls. I think Estelle Getty was like in her 50s and played an 80-year-old woman on Golden Girls. These two women dressed up like geriatrics to get free vaccines, but they were caught on their way to the second one, which means they slipped through the first one. I guess props for being creative and innovative, but still a little shitty.
Do you know what I think? So there were so many things about this story that sort of cracked me up. So, I mean, the two young women, they were in their 20s. So, and they were, dressed up like grannies, and they were wearing lace gloves, which is sort of funny. It's like what a 20-year-old thinks a grandmother looks like.
Right.
I mean, you only have to be, 65 to be, in line for the vaccine. Like they're literally dressing like Miss Havisham over here. I don't know that they needed to take it quite that far. They're not like Victorian grandmothers, So, and the other thing is, why did they need to dress old? If they were going to sneak in, why couldn't they have just pretended that they had some underlying health condition that maybe wasn't visible on the surface?
Well, I'll channel your lawyer, like it's the people that show up in court with the neck brace that have nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, true. Like, I just don't get it. I mean, look, everyone wants the vaccine, or lots of people want the vaccine, and I get not wanting to wait your turn. Of course, we're like living in a society here. You have to wait your turn until you're supposed to go. What I thought was really remarkable about this is that when these two girls were found, the police like read them the riot act, and they told them that if they even showed up again at the vaccine center, they would be arrested on site, which is pretty harsh.
Wait, so were they denied the second shot? I mean, can you do that? They were
denied the second shot. There was some question about whether they had actually gotten the first shot.
Mm-hmm.
They had a vaccine card that said they got the first shot, but who knows if that's even accurate? Because if it is accurate, then they should just give them the second shot. Why would you waste, it's sort of like you're not wasting it if you give it to them, even though they jumped the line. They're still getting the benefit of the vaccine, even if it maybe wasn't fair. I don't know why you would go ahead and waste the vaccine.
No, it's like, and there's a public benefit to it, even though it's a horrible way to say there's a public benefit to it.
Right. There is a public benefit because the more people that are vaccinated, the better it is for everyone. So even though we want people to wait their turn, the bottom line is it's not as much taking it away from someone else, because it helps the better, the greater good anyway. But of course, I imagine they probably wanted to make an example out of these women to discourage someone else from doing the same thing. And let me tell you, there was surveillance footage of the whole conversation, and these girls were scared. You could tell they were so scared, and they were apologizing to the police. They promised they would never come back. So, hopefully maybe they learned their lesson to not break the law in the future.
I mean, it's just like, dear black market CDC ID card industry waiting to happen.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. All right, moving on. We have another story here. Women who have been recently vaccinated against COVID-19 should delay mammograms for at least a month. I would love to know where this came from.
Yeah. So, I read about this, and this is like, the precursor to Sophie's Choice COVID edition, right? Because what do? Do you get the mammogram and then delay your COVID vaccine, or do you get the COVID vaccine and delay the mammogram? Like, I guess it depends on what your personal health history is. But medical experts, a number of experts actually have come out. And I did some research on this, and I found it, in fact, all over the internet. In some places, the advice came from these advocacy groups that promote, getting mammograms and other cancer screenings. And some just from, expert doctors talking to media. What it's saying is you get the vaccine, and many women get swollen lymph nodes from the vaccine, which is also a sign of breast cancer. So it doesn't mean you're going to get hurt if you get a mammogram afterwards, but your mammogram may be inconclusive or may show something that's, may be a false positive, which is not really what any of us want. That's not really the point of a mammogram. You want to make sure it's as accurate as possible.
Right.
And I was in exactly this situation, because I canceled my mammogram last spring because of COVID, and then rescheduled it, and then realized I was going to get the COVID shot. And then I was like, I need to make sure that everything is in the right order.
I mean, I wonder if the diagnostics companies that are in the mammogram space are asking people who have scheduled appointments if they've gotten the vaccine and asking them to reschedule.
I wonder if they are. I bet you they're not, because I'll tell you what, like, no one has asked me if I've gotten the COVID vaccine for anything else that I've done. No one was like, oh, by the way, did you happen to get the COVID vaccine? So I wonder if they're doing that. It doesn't really seem like, when it comes to the COVID vaccine, that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Like, you have to walk in and be like, I got the COVID vaccine, and then cross-examine them to get the answer that you want.
And that's This Week in Fuckery.
Get your mammograms, people. Don't ask me when. Just get it sometime. The alternative is, trying to get a mammogram while social distancing from the person who's 3 inches away from you, sticking your boob into that squishy thing. So it's like, really? All right, Matt, now it's time for Not Fake News, the, uplifting part of the show, where we talk not about fuckery, but about good news.
Yeah, it was always downhill when we started, but now maybe climbing back up somewhat. So what's going on?
Yeah, so President Biden wants schools to open like so many of the rest of us. And he said that he wants most K-8 schools open 5 days a week within his first 100 days in office. So I think this is good news, I think.
Well, I was listening to Leanna Wen, props to Leanna Wen, today on Twitter. She did an interview where she talked about how, I guess in the interest of like states' rights and eugenics, some of the major metropolitan areas will have herd immunity of their own. It's not all of a sudden one day the whole country has herd immunity. There are so many more people trying to get vaccinated in major blue markets that New York City might see herd immunity in a microcosmic way more quickly, which would maybe get the unions to back off a little bit and actually work with the state government to open the schools per what Biden wants to get done.
So that's a good thing. What you just said really goes to the heart of what the issue is here. And I sort of wish that the discussion about opening schools always had that other half. Like, in other words, yes, we all want them to be open, but I want to know why. So if you're going to tell me, yeah, it's because certain places have established herd immunity, awesome. That's great. That's what I want to know. But that's very different than saying, this community should open. Why? Well, we've just been closed a long time and it's difficult. I want to know from medically or statistically, why is now the right time? And I think that because things are so different in different places, it makes the conversation really rough to have because it's local. And when you see the president say, well, we want it to be everywhere. Well, I hope it happens everywhere, but I don't know if it's going to happen everywhere. I hope it's based on science and not political pressure.
Well, I think the allegory is also like the minimum wage conversation, because $50 an hour in, some rural area could be a lot more money compared to cost of living in $15 an hour in Manhattan, right? So
right.
It can't be, as much as it is like a federal dogmatic wish that could affect all Americans, it can't happen writ large. It has to happen in almost like microeconomic success stories.
Yeah, it has to happen in like little individual bubbles. But, I think, though, that there's probably value in the president making that statement just so that everyone hears this is what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not it can happen, it's not up to Joe Biden whether it can happen or not. He doesn't hold all the cards of like, what the COVID numbers are.
Right.
But it definitely is comforting and helps to know, like, look, the guy who the buck stops with him really, really wants this to be the case, because that he'll take some kind of political credit if it happens. So great. If there's anything the federal government can do to help us out, I'm glad to know that that he's motivated to help us out. Hopefully the decisions are made with, good science in mind.
So, pseudo-hypothetical public health survey of all parents who have kids in grade school. If we would have asked them, bipartisan, how much would you like your kids to be able to go back to school full time safely and get your life back? How many would say no thanks?
Let me say this. I think only some would say no thanks. And I think the ones that would say no thanks are parents. And I think it's a small subset, but I think it's the parents who have found that because of something particular to their family or their child is doing better at home working remotely than they would have been in school, whether it's because a child has medical conditions or learning needs or social needs or something like that. I think you will find a small subset that's like, no, we want to stick this out, keep doing it remotely. But I think for the overwhelming majority, if it were safe, we all would want to be back. In fact, I filled out a totally non-hypothetical actual survey about 2 hours ago where my school district said, if we can keep everyone socially distanced, do you want to come back 4 days a week? And I was like, yeah. But the next question was, but what if we can't keep them socially distanced?
Well, again, it also speaks to the science and the data around, transmission rates in kids and immunizations in teachers, and where do we fall in prioritizing educators to be immunized within 100 days in market. I mean, New York has 1 point something million kids. It's like its own country of education. Right. this goes back to the lockdown and how we start opening and closing schools based on zip codes. It cannot be a one size fits all versus, like we said, like a smaller school district in South Jersey.
I mean, I'll say this, though. I think that prioritizing teachers and school staff should be a universal thing, because it should be step one for everybody to send their kids back. We should know that the teachers are in the best possible health situation. So I don't really understand why that's not universal, because let me tell you, if I found out that my child went back to school and the teacher tested positive for COVID, I would be pissed. Not at the teacher, but I would be pissed at the environment that didn't set that teacher up for success.
It also opens up another floodgate to teachers that do not want to be vaccinated, and against the multiculturalistic nature of New York City.
Oh, yeah, right. And right, if you have a lot of people that don't want to be vaccinated, then that causes a whole other issue. I don't know. It's like the lawyer in me wants to make sure that people's individual rights are protected. And then the mom is like, I don't care, just get vaccinated to protect my kid. I don't care about your individuality. So it's like a constant tension on those two things.
Right. And that's an entire other rabbit hole. I think I've said that word like 9 times so far in this episode.
You got rabbits on the brain. Well, it's spring. Rabbits, Easter.
True. That is true.
Have a chocolate bunny.
Well done to bring the Gregorian calendar into this. But, we talk about vaccine hesitancy. We'll probably cover that next week because that's becoming a major narrative in communities of color. There's natural hesitancies to do this that are ingrained in 200 years of institutional racism and disenfranchisement. So, again, other rabbit hole to deal with that. But it makes sense. In New York City, there's a huge diversity in the teaching population based on background and origin and culture. There can't be, like, if everyone is white in South Jersey, it doesn't work that way.
Right. It is right. I think you're exactly right that we really have to take into account a number of things. I think, where people get their information from, because, I get so much of my information just from my mom friends and my peers. And, I'm lucky because I live in a community where the average person in my community is educated, professional, 2-income household. Most of these people are getting information from primary sources, and they're not, getting it from conspiracy theory, weird news websites and shit like that. So when I get information from another PTA mom, I can, I'm not going to blindly trust it, but it tends to usually be accurate.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, I think you're at such a disadvantage.
100%. I mean, again, I'm also coming at this from the lens of I live in New York. I work in New York. I'm born and raised in New York. And I'm glad that the initiative really isn't high school specific, because then you get into all the nuances of subway travel and transportation and packing up the MTA trains with more people that may not wear masks and increased transmission rates. I mean, for what it's worth, and I'm making this up, but I think this is fact-ish or factoid-ish.
Fact-ish.
Transmission rates in Manhattan have been consistently very, very low because everyone gives a shit about everyone else here by and large. So if we open up the high schools, it lends itself towards more people using public transportation, but it's been shown in New York that the subways have not really been sources of transmission, even though they're at 20, 30, 40% ridership. So I'm glad, to come full circle to where I started, that this is largely a Biden initiative driven specifically for K through 8.
Right. It's interesting you say that about mass transit, because once the pandemic was about midway, from so maybe summertime, like late summer, that's when I started to really go places for the first time since the shutdown. And Manhattan was one of the first places that I went. And I didn't expect that I was going to take the subway, but I ended up on the subway and I was so afraid. I was really, really freaked out. It was one of the first places I went. And I was so pleasantly surprised because to this day, I can't really remember being anywhere where I felt so safe because of the way people were acting. People were so conscious of not getting in each other's faces. They were so conscious of giving people space when they were getting on and off. Everyone was wearing a mask. I really got the sense New Yorkers were just taking it so, so seriously in a way that, didn't quite match up with what I saw elsewhere. People are really good where I live too, but it wasn't quite the same. It was almost like New York had like hospital staff. They were like professionals at dealing with it, maybe because New York got hit so hard in the beginning. But it was, interesting to see. I think I agree with you that, in places where people, care about each other, it helps.
So again, coming full circle on this issue, we can wrap up by just making maybe premonitions or surmising the fact that, what are going to get teachers confident that they can go back to work. But again, it's so N of one, which is a jargony science term for it's individualized per county or per city. What is going to get teachers comfortable to go back and feel like they're not going to be at risk? Because we know largely the kids aren't going to be at risk against this greater good conversation. Again, we can tackle this next week. The mental health of these poor kids, depression is on the rise. Suicide is at an all-time high for teenagers. This is horrible stuff. And at what cost are we doing this for our public safety against what we're doing to our children?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it's like time to really think about how can we balance it. And to me, I always go back to, why can't we just figure out a way to ventilate things better? If that's the main source of transmission, why can't we just have bigger places with more space and more ventilation? I mean, is it impossible? Really? I just don't believe it. I don't believe it's impossible. Like, take over a freaking shopping mall and put the second graders in there. Put them 15 feet apart if we have to. It's not impossible to figure this shit out. Where there's money, there's solutions, like anything else.
There was that conversation. If I were home, I'd be staring out the window of my kids' 190-year-old school that was erected in Brooklyn during the Precambrian era of Earth growth.
Yes.
But why can't they move them into the giant mall outlet, and take over unused retail space?
Yeah, I don't get it. There's movie theaters. Literally, there's movie theaters set up to show media. Sit the freaking kids in there. Broadway's empty. Throw the kids in the freaking theater.
Right.
How hard is this? Because once again, my solution always is, if you found 6 PTA presidents at random, they would figure this shit out by the end of the day.
Yes.
I know they would. So it's I don't know who's in charge. There's a part of me, and I'm not someone who generally believes that, men and dads don't know anything about child rearing. I don't believe that one bit. I know wonderful men, wonderful fathers. But there is a part of me that really wonders if the government types in charge are all men who have never had primary child rearing responsibilities and have absolutely no idea how to manage this type of thing. And I really feel like a bunch of moms and elementary school teachers, put those people in there. They'll figure it out.
Yep.
The teachers I know are smart. They'll come up with solutions. I don't know what's going on. Nobody's asked my opinion. That's all I know. No one has asked me how to fix it, and I'm sure I'd have an idea.
Well, our listeners now have your opinion. So I think that wraps up this segment of Not Fake News. And I don't know, I think that kind of ties maybe 1/10 of 1% of all the crap going on in a nice little bun.
What do you got going on this week, Matt? Anything fun coming up?
I think the big news in anticipation of next week's show is that I will have received my second vaccination shot. We're taping this on a Tuesday. I'll be getting my shot on Friday. And I did have a fairly virulent reaction to the first shot, so I'm not anticipating having a fabulous weekend. So I'm preparing the blanket, the bed, and the ice pack and the heating pad.
Yes, saddle up. As you remember, we're vaccine twins. We got our first dose the same day. I'm also getting my second dose on Friday. So I have cleared the weekend. I've got lots of Netflix, ready to deal with whatever weird night sweats and strange COVID arm and strange things come at me. It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? To be looking forward to a shot and knowing that you might feel sick afterwards, but sort of being really excited for it.
It's kind of a good problem to have. Take it for the team mentality, but I think we're going to have a lot to talk about on next week's show.
Yes, definitely. Well, so good luck, and we'll meet up here again, and we'll tell our stories of woes following vaccine number 2.
All right, listeners, thanks for joining us for another exciting episode of VAXON, your weekly digest of fuckery and all that jazz.
Tell us what's going on in your life. We want to hear your stories as you get vaccinated and wade through the fuckery that is this season.
Yep. Tweet us at VaxOnPod with the hashtag VaxOn, and we'll gather up all that recon and spit it back out somehow next week.
Take care.
That's all for today, folks. If you like today's show, the conversation continues on Twitter at VaxOnPod. That's VAXON Pod. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tell all your friends to listen. VAXON is a product of OffScrip Media. Our executive producers are Matthew Zachary and Elura Nano. Our senior producers are Brianna Seeley and Andrew McDowell. It is mixed and edited by Brianna Seeley. Our theme music is by Chair Model. For advertising and media inquiries, email media@offscrip.com. Hit us up at contact@offscrip.com to share comments, feedback, and make recommendations. For more information, visit offscrip.com.